wondering if it's worth traveling abroad when no one can predict how the pandemic is going to affect classes and campus life. We hope our panelists, comprised of faculty and students from various institutions and disciplines, can answer some of your questions and provide you with information to help you make the right decision. The Olsenarian Society wishes you the best of health and safety in the year ahead. With this, I would like to turn the mic over to Harveen Maan, an Olsenarian of the 73 batch and an associate professor of English and pre-law advisor at Loyola University, Chicago, who will moderate today's webinar. Over to you, Harveen.
Thank you, General Kulpreet, and thanks to the OSS executive and especially to the Vice President Praneet Babbar for all of your support for this webinar. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging Rupinder Sidhu of the 71 batch, who first proposed the idea of offering a webinar on the fall 2020 semester. Ringo's suggestion was taken up enthusiastically by Anjum Siddiqui, the Toronto chapter coordinator, and supported wholeheartedly by our entire team of the Eastern US. That's Karan Bhalla, Harpal Maini, Ranjit Rawley, and Sunil Verma. So thank you guys. Our deepest thanks is of course reserved for our student and faculty panelists. And I'm sure the audience joins me in expressing our appreciation to them. And I'd like to get directly to the webinar, and I'll begin by asking the speakers to introduce themselves briefly and to give us a summary of where the universities stand with regard to the teaching situation for fall. Following this, we'll take questions from the floor. So first, I'd like to ask Professor Abhiroop Chakrabarty, who is a 93 batch Olsenarian, who teaches at Queen's University in Canada, to fill us in on the situation at his institution. Abhiroop.
Thank you, Professor Mann. So we are proceeding with some kind of a mixed model for the fall 2020 term. And so for now, the buildings are closed to all non-essential use and people have to fob in and fob out. We should know exactly who's in the building and they must be there for some purpose. So that's true with all the buildings at the university. And our planning for fall is that we're going to try and get some of those courses that require in-person interaction, like courses with laboratories and courses in nursing and medicine and some of the sciences, to have that work. And so what's required for that is to make sure that there are not too many people in these buildings and in certain spaces at any point of time. And so there's a lot of restrictions in terms of, or not restrictions, I suppose the norms for today's world, in terms of the wearing masks, social distancing, and also inside classrooms where they're going to try and make sure people don't sit close together, and also keep like a maximum number of students per class. So we've got this happening in some of the courses that require in-person interaction, but also we're seeing some graduate programs like the MBA program, for instance, that are thinking of in-person deliveries as well. And so what's obvious is that the university is going to pay very close attention to the public health advisories. So if there's an advisory to close down certain spaces, they will close down. But as of now, I think the setup is pretty advanced to allow the university to function and not close down, and maybe target like prevention and also small outbreaks if that happens. I'm hoping that won't. But I think, having said this, I think I'm going to add another very brief comment on what I'm sensing is two elements that are important, and I'm hoping that some of it might come up in the Q&A, and I'll let some of the other people speak, of course, very quickly. That is, in terms of online courses, I don't think it's a disadvantage necessarily, but I think there are certain aspects that everybody has to remember and pay attention to. And I'll just say two broad headings. One is the demands. What are the demands on you to be able to study online effectively? And the second is learning outcomes. What are you trying to get out of these courses? And you have to be very careful in terms of for yourself. And it's going to be very different, the answer to different types of courses. How are you going to use the online platform to achieve those learning outcomes. And so the courses, I've taught 2 courses so far online completely. Like one of these courses started at the time when the university closed down. I was halfway through it. And the other was an MBA course, which was completely online. And I thought it went really well. And so it went well. I got really good feedback from students. So it's not a disadvantage per se, but one has to be very careful about the demands that are needed from your side, and also the learning outcomes. So with that, I'll stop this introductory statement. I'm happy to come back with questions, and I'll let the others speak.
Thanks, Abhiroop. We'll ask Professor Vasant Dhar, who's a 72 OS, to share a little bit about NYU with us. Vasant.
Thanks, Harbeen. Glad to be here. And I just want to start by saying that I switched to online sometime in February. And this was well before the midterm break. And the reason I switched is because I had a lot of Chinese students. One of them returning from China complained that, she was feeling a little under the weather. So I just, I told my deans and everyone that I was switching, and was that okay? And they said, yeah, just do whatever you need to do. And I was actually, frankly, I've been teaching a long time, but I was, to be honest, quite terrified at the thought of a 3-hour Zoom session. It's something that, I teach a class, I've been teaching it for a long time. It's face-to-face, it's interactive. I try and inject humor. And all that suddenly was gone, right? So the question I really had to ask myself was, what are the advantages of this new medium that I can exploit, recognizing that a lot of the advantages of face-to-face are gone. And we can, I'll hold that for the Q&A as to what I did and what my experiences were, which was somewhat mixed. I mean, some things worked well and some things didn't, and then they eventually got better. And I'm sharing that with my colleagues, like what worked and what didn't work. Coming back to what the university is doing, so the one thing I'm realizing is that each university has a unique challenge, right? So Cornell is very different from NYU, for example, right? It's a very not suburban, it's out in the woods kind of campus, they can insulate themselves. So every campus is very unique. And NYU being an urban campus and one that gets people from all over the world. I mean, but by the way, one thing I should say is that there's considerable disagreement, even among faculty, as to what the correct model is going forward, right? Some people feel that it's insane to have any kind of face-to-face interaction, especially when you've got, 70-year-old Nobel laureates coming into class and susceptible to getting infected. So it's not clear what's going to happen. I mean, in the words of the famous American philosopher Donald Rumsfeld, we're facing, tremendous unknown unknowns, right? I mean, no one really knows, and things change from week to week, right? Like last Friday's faculty meeting, I just learned a whole bunch of new things that I didn't know 2 weeks ago. So there's a furious amount of activity going on behind the scenes among the administrators who are trying to figure out 2 things. One is efficiency. How do you really actually staff these physical classrooms, right? And all of my operations management people have gone and berserk into overdrive, trying to figure out what's the optimal way of utilizing classes, considering that we're going to be functioning at 20 or 30% of capacity. So that's one line of work, is how do we actually function operationally in this? What kind of testing are we going to have, to ensure, that we're on top of this? Some people think it's wishful thinking that things are going to go out of control. It remains to be seen, right? Nothing is certain at the moment. And so the administrators are trying to figure out testing procedures, efficiency, all that kind of stuff. But it's all, sort of work in progress at the moment. I'm I'm a professor at the Stern School of Business, and I also run the PhD program. I'm the director of grad studies at the Center for Data Science. And we find that we're essentially having to see what the state guidelines are, because the state mandates what you can do, right? So people dealing with animals, for example, phase 2 or something, right? They can go back earlier. So there's state guidelines, and then on top of that, universities are trying to implement their own guidelines. Like, should we have plexiglass between spaces? Should we do contact tracing? What does that mean for privacy? There's all kinds of stuff that universities are just scrambling to get on top of, and it's all work in process at the moment. So let me just stop there and hand it over to you, Harveen.
Thank you, Vasant. Next, Professor Sumit Gulati, who's a 1990 batch OS, will tell us about the plans at the University of British Columbia.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Mann. I am a professor at University of British Columbia. I am the program director of the Food and Resource Economics program here. What I have to say is not very different from what Vasant and Abhirup have already mentioned. UBC is going to do somewhat of a mixed model, but frankly, it's much more of an online model. There's a few classes, a few selected graduate programs that may have some face-to-face, but almost everything is going to be online. It's certainly going to be mostly online in September for the first semester of this winter. It most likely will also be online for the second semester of this winter, which is the negotiations are on, and it seems most of the departments want to just make sure that it's already online. We can plan for it even for January. Students mostly are not coming in. Our residences are not opening. Some graduate students may come in, but there's a very sort of a complicated, but I think fairly clear. And if you are admitted to any university in Canada, you probably already know this. There's a complicated way that allows a few people to come in, and it's sort of 3 requirements. You must have got a letter before March 18th for admission. You must have proof for essential travel, and most teaching is not going to be essential. If it's an online course offering, it's not essential for you to be traveling to Canada, and you must have a plan for self-isolation. So all I have to say is basically students are not going to be here. Some departments will be open. We might go into the university to teach because there'll be studios set up for us to help teach. But the number of people there will be quite limited. But the other thing that's happening is the government of Canada is now opening student permits, which will allow, if you are a student at UBC, to take online classes and have those classes count towards your postgraduate work permits. But you won't be here most likely unless somehow your professors can prove that your coming here is essential for your learning. I don't have much else to say, and I don't really know what exactly you want to know, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thanks, Sumit. Next, I'll ask Professor Simran Sahih, who's a 71 batch OS, to talk to us about the University of Minnesota.
Hello, so I'm Simran Sahih. I am the Director of Undergraduate Studies in Economics at the University of Minnesota. And so I run the undergraduate program, and I also supervise all the instructors. So Minnesota is the same as all the other universities, that most classes will be online in fall. And there'll be very few in-person or what we are calling hybrid courses. And those are again in the sciences and in medicine and so on. The reason being that the CDC guidelines have said that there has to be a 6 feet difference between 2 people when they are sitting down in a classroom. And most of my classes in economics are 70 people. And there is no way that there are that many large auditoriums where we can fit in those people. So most of our classes are online. But I monitor the quality of all the classes, at least in economics, and we make very sure that everyone is undergoing training and so on. So the university has mandated very heavy duty training for all instructors who are going to be teaching online. So it's not that you just do what you like. Everybody has to do it in a standard way. And we oversee everything, and I oversee all the training that everyone is doing. It comes to me that so-and-so has finished this training. So we are making very sure that students get the very best from our instructors, which will be all online at this point. I think that's about it. If you have, we are encouraging even our own students that please take your courses online because the future is a bit uncertain and we are not very sure when the government or the university or anybody else will open up classes to in-person instruction, which is what we all love. I have been teaching for almost 40 years and I love in-person teaching, but then we this is what has happened, and so we have to make the best of it, and we are making the best. We are trying our best. We do have students from China and Korea and India. I was teaching in spring also when the virus hit, and then we all had to switch online. It went fairly smoothly with everybody. It was just the time difference with China is a little too much. I think it's 13 hours. But the students were fabulous and everybody had very good instructions, and all these student evaluations, most of them were very positive that students got a lot out of the classes. So I'll stop there and let this go on. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Simran. And the final of the faculty panelists is Professor Ravi Sohi, a 75 batch OS who teaches at the University of Nebraska.
Thanks, Arvind. So just a little bit, actually after Sonar, I went to BITS Pilani, did a degree in engineering there, got my MBA at Jamnalal Bajaj, and then after working for a couple of years in the industry, came to the US, came to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I got my master's and my PhD. So I've had a chance to actually experience the best of the education systems, both in India and here in the US. I have been here now almost 30 years. I'm currently the department chair in marketing. I've also had several administrative positions in the College of Business. So Nebraska is a part of what's called the Big Ten Conference, and we coordinate closely with the other universities in the conference. So, some of the procedures I'll describe are being followed by the other universities. And the universities in that conference include Northwestern, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, Indiana, Purdue, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, Maryland, and Rutgers. So fairly large universities. So we received a mandate from our president saying we have to plan for in-person classes for fall, but at the same time plan for any contingencies. Contingencies meaning if we have to go completely online middle of the semester, plan for that. If some student cannot attend, plan for that. If somebody falls sick, plan for that. So broad mandate. So a couple of things we did. One is we adjusted the academic calendar. So typically our classes start last week of August, end by early December. And they said, well, why not start 1 week early and end by Thanksgiving, which is end of November. So we are starting our classes 1 week early, but those first week is going to be online only. That gives a chance for students to move back into the residence halls. And we will actually have a 3-week break, and then the spring semester will also start later. So essentially, we're going to have a 6-week break between the fall semester and the spring semester. So that way the spring semester can follow the same format with no spring break in between. And in the 6 weeks, there are chances to offer online pop-up courses and specialized topics if people want to do that. Now, as far as the class formats are concerned, it was based on the physical capacity of the classroom. So somebody actually went around, the whole committee, measuring the distances between each space with a yard, with the actual 6 feet stick. And they told us, okay, in each classroom, what's the maximum physical capacity you can have? So here's what we did. If a class was small, I'm talking about 20 students, we can actually have a fully online class. If it's a large one, we have it completely online, but we're trying to limit the number of completely online classes. And anybody who's teaching online has to be trained. Most of our classes are what we're calling the split hybrid format. That means half the people, if it's twice a week class, half the people can attend physically in class on one day, and then the other half can attend on the other day. But the people who don't attend, they have the option to watch the lecture live or the lecture is recorded so they can actually watch it asynchronously. So most of our classes are set up, and we've actually been testing. We have the technology, so we've been testing to see how it comes across in a live format. And in the classroom, we got safety procedures. So you've got the disinfectants. I mean, all that is being taken care of. Now, what are some of the options for international students? If they can come on time, that's great, but we know that's going to be difficult for many of them. So one option is take classes fully online for the fall semester. So if you cannot come in, take it fully online. The other option is start classes online, but join in the middle of the semester. So we are saying till end of September, if you want to join, then you can join the class in person. Or the third option is just defer, take a fall semester off and just defer to the spring semester. So we're trying to accommodate based on what would work best for each student. We've also got, safety precautions around the campus. Of course, you got the social distancing requirements in all classrooms, but in our dorms and the dining halls, I mean, they made adjustments. So if somebody does not want a double room, they get a single room. In the dining halls, there used to be a buffet system. There's no longer a buffet system. You can actually go in, stand distance, socially distance, and eat there, or you can take your food and have it to go. So all that is being set up. Our University Health Center has set up a testing facility. So anybody who feels they may have any symptoms can go to the testing facility. The University Medical Center, which by the way is one of the leading centers for infectious diseases. So whenever there's some issue there, they're the ones that do the research. So they've actually developed an app that people can use. So if there's any sign, they can use that, and then it tells them where to go further. So we are using isolation procedures for safety, but at the same time, we want to try and maintain as much normalcy in the campus life. Now, as far as some other things are concerned, our enrollments have actually gone up, interestingly. And part of it is because of the online format. Many of the students have found that to be more convenient, especially in summer. And so they've taken classes online. There are other things, which people have to think about, whether they should wait now and finish off or graduate. But I think that's really depends on the situation, and I'll just leave that to the Q&A sessions. So thank you, and back to you, Harveen.
Thanks, Ravi, so much. We'll move on next to our student panelists, the first among whom is Mahira Bawa. She is the daughter of old Senarian Ranjit Bawa of the class of '89, and Mahira studies at MIT in Boston. To you, Mahira.
Hi, everyone. So thank you for that introduction, Harveen. Also, my aunt Avantika Bawa and my daddy Shashi Bawa also are old Senarians, and I've heard great stories about Senar from them. So I'm going into my third year at MIT, and I'm studying mechanical engineering. MIT this fall has decided to invite only seniors back to campus, and all other students are remote, or they can take a leave of absence. And every 2 weeks, there will be testing for everyone on campus. And after Thanksgiving break, which is a week break we have in November, all seniors have to stay at home. So no one is allowed back after Thanksgiving. And after that time, everyone will be remote. I personally, being a mechanical engineering student, have noticed that my coursework is very hands-on, very project-based, and very collaboration-based, in the sense that we have to work with people and professors a lot in our classes. It's not as much exam-focused as it is project-focused. And so remote learning with that curriculum was challenging for me this past spring when we went remote in the middle of the semester. All our projects were essentially canceled, and I didn't think that I learned as much as I had in past semesters. So for that reason, I decided to take a gap semester. So I will not be returning back to school this fall, and instead I will be working at a robotics company called iRobot, which is close by to university. So I'll be living with MIT students near MIT and working for a semester. And I'm happy to answer any questions about more about why I made that decision and more about the student perspective with remote learning. So that's all for me for now. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Mahira. I'll ask Zareen Kang to tell us next about the plans at Oberlin College in Ohio. Zareen is H.S. Kang's daughter. H.S. is an OS of the 75 batch, and Zareen is a senior at Oberlin College. Zareen, over to you.
Hi, everyone. So first things off, I was born and raised in New Jersey, so I'm pretty close to Rutgers University. So I have some knowledge of what's happening with the program there. But I do go to Oberlin College in Ohio in my last year of undergrad. So I'm majoring in history, minoring in politics, philosophy, and law and society. I also work as a PAL, or a peer advising leader. And I've been on multiple talks as well as led classes to introduce first years to college life. We basically provide mentorship for first years to adapt to college life and navigate healthy discourse on studying habits, time management, and other ideas. The plan for Oberlin's kind of interesting. We normally have the fall and spring semester, but they've actually changed it to a fall, spring, and summer semester. Everyone still attends 2 semesters, but they basically want 3 years on campus at a time. So for example, the fall semester will have first years, second years, and fourth years. Spring has first years, third years, and fourth years, and then the summer semesters for second and third years. We have around 2,800 students, so doing this would allow there to be 2,000 students instead for each semester. They also are guaranteeing single rooms, so no roommates for each student. And they also are allowing people to appeal to do remote learning instead of returning back to campus. So people who are immunocompromised or worried about going back to campus can, do remote learning. When it comes to our courses, we have both hybrid and remote courses. So people can choose if they want to be on campus, if they'd rather just do remote on campus, or hybrid, which means going in person. Like it's been said earlier, they measured the classroom, see how many people could fit in a room, and professors are actually teaching behind plexiglass. So some interesting things being incorporated. They're also providing us with masks and testing as soon as we arrive on campus, as well as every 3 weeks. So they're definitely doing things to make me feel more secure about heading back to campus, and I will actually be heading back August 16th for training for the PAL program, which I mentioned earlier. Most people are heading back towards around August 30th or 31st. They also have an app like Ravi Sohi mentioned earlier, which will be tracking symptoms, how people are feeling, and getting an idea of how kids are doing on campus. We also have a social contract, which we actually have to sign, saying that we're going to be wearing our masks regularly, social distancing, doing all the things to make sure that people on campus can feel safe. So yeah, happy to answer any questions. Thanks,
Zareen. We'll go next to Krishna Moda, who's class of 2017 from Sanar. Krishna studies at the University of Toronto.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. There's nothing new that I can particularly add to this discourse, being the second last person on it. It's pretty much the same since we're all here from top tier universities. The University of Toronto, okay, sorry, let me just start off by saying something about myself. I'm in my final year at the University of Toronto. I am studying 3 subjects: cinema studies, art history, and statistics. The University of Toronto is following a hybrid model. That being said, they will have an online option for the entirety of the academic year 2020-2021. Depending on the class size, they do have an in-person option. That's what I've heard of, since some of the classes that I'm enrolled in currently, they only have about 20 kids. So there is, and they have restricted the in-person class to about 4 to 5 kids, depending on the class size. And yeah, like Vasant was saying here earlier, Dr. Vasant was saying here earlier, that it would be pretty naive to think about that we can just swap online education for in-person education. So universities are looking at a new way to augment this new way of learning, and everybody's just learning at the same pace. We're all discovering the world as together at the same rate. So you have to be really updated on what's going on with the universities. And yeah, there's nothing else I can actually add to it anymore, but feel free to ask any questions. I'm always here. Cheers.
Thanks so much, Krishna. And our final panelist is Jayveer Singh. I think the only one of us who is in India right now, so does bring definitely that perspective. Jayveer's mother and grandfather are both Ulsanarians, and Jay is currently a student at Loyola Marymount University in California. To you, Jay.
Thank you for the introduction. Hi everyone, I'm Jayveer, and as you mentioned, I am in India, so I came back, but I did attend the past spring semester online for nearly 2.5 months. So like, if you have any questions on that, I'll be glad to answer it for you. I'm actually a new transfer sophomore to Loyola Marymount University, and in terms of what they're doing for the coming fall semester, is they had initially planned on doing a hybrid model in which they would measure the capacity of each class, and then they would decide how that would go from an in-class and online. And we were each given a single bedroom in our residences, but then that was switched, and now we're doing a almost completely online fall semester. And I'm an economics major, so my courses are mainly going to be theoretical based. So for me, I actually had quite a positive experience doing online classes last semester, because I found that it gave me time to like adjust to any new material given. And like, in terms of people, I get it, you can substitute like face-to-face learning or like in-person communication, but I didn't find that too much of being a hindering factor. I always email my professors. I could always communicate to them through advising that I could register for. It wasn't like a barrier for me to learn. As for exams were also like, they were timed, but I didn't find any difference in terms of anxiety or stress giving the exam. I found it like giving it on my own time. Like, you could take it at any time I want, but it would be a certain like time limit giving it. So it was pretty good for me. But yeah, if you have any questions on regarding how I found the online semester or how I like went about transferring while taking an online semester, please feel free to shoot me a question. Thank you.
So thanks so much, and thanks to all the panelists, I think, for bringing us up to date on what's happening right now, July 26th. And we think that things will stay steady from now on out until the fall semester. I don't anticipate any major changes here. And I think there's been advice knit into their comments as well, but we are happy to entertain questions from the floor now. And we have a couple that have already been submitted, audience questions. So I'd like to start by posing a question about how assessments will be done for the various kinds of classes. So if it's an online class, is there a different kind of methodology of tests and exams as compared to a hybrid model, as compared to an in-person class? So how does again, the type of class that a student is taking affect the kind of assessments, and also in terms of grading? And this is to the panelists. Can I ask? Yes. Okay. Sumit, would you like to start, and then Ravi follow up with that, please?
I'm just going to actually, I'd rather have Ravi or Abhirup start because they both raised their hands. I haven't taught online, and I have suggestions and I have some training, but I think if someone's already done it, they're probably better suited. And I can jump in. I just put my hand up because I saw a little bit of I didn't see anyone else raise their hands, but yeah, go ahead.
Ravi, to you, and then to Abhirup.
So a couple of things. One, of course, is the assignments. Assignments, we are using Zoom as a default platform. And so the assignments can be done with the students and the instructor, everything online. In fact, many of our cases, they can also be done online. So as far as assessments are concerned, a couple of things. One is the testing system. We are actually using a facility called Proctoru. And what Proctoru does is enables somebody to take the exam from their computer. However, before they take the exam, they actually have to move the webcam around to show that there's nobody else in the room, there's no other material there. And then they'll also sense if there is some issue or if there's somebody assisting. So, and that report goes to the instructor. The other thing that also comes up is if you got some kind of an online lecture or something, is the student really going to see it, or they just going to put it on? And so what we are doing is the instructors are actually strategically embedding certain questions in that lecture, and they have a certain time to just answer that. And if they're not answered, they know they've really not been doing that. So those are just some of the things that we're doing to ensure there's active participation.
Thank you. Abhirup, could we turn to you? Yes.
Okay, I can add to what Professor Ravi was saying. So the course that I taught, in fact, 2 courses online, they're very interactive. So I thought that this would be one of the more difficult courses to shift online. I hadn't experienced online teaching before. So it's just a lot about self-reflection and discussion about problems from an individual standpoint. And so the discussion of cases and also lots of friendly consulting inside the classroom where problems are posed, and there are panelists inside the classroom amongst students who try to answer those problems. So we've got lots of different types of interactions I do in the classroom. So it's, I'll tell you that I've had a tough time doing it in the physical classroom. This is the surprising part, because all the chairs and tables are like stuck to the ground and they all have to face me. So every time they say something, the face goes to the professor right in front. And so what I've been doing is trying to shift into classrooms which have round tables where they don't actually have to look at me all the time. And it really worked well online. And so we could easily get into breakout rooms. Of course, I think everybody should pay note to Professor Ravi's comment on how exams are taken. And that's an important thing to remember. I didn't have a final exam. It's all about group and individual write-ups and how they came and spoke online. Like they made presentation, they tried to convince each other. We had lots of structures around how people were speaking and who would speak when. I had role plays. So there was nobody sitting in the classroom looking at the screen thinking, what's my role here? Everybody had a very specific role, either as a business leader or as a stakeholder or as a community member to address the challenge and to question what people were saying. So yes, and I agree with the statement that there's been some. So it's something that universities have been trying to do for a long time, like get a bit more inroads into online education for better outreach. And this is the time where this has really pushed us like through the constraints that universities were facing in this hurdle. A lot of progress and totally lots of questions still left unanswered. But so these are the kind of changes, right? In terms of how courses are being administered, lots of flexibilities. In terms of recorded presentation, so you don't have to sit in the class and listen to the professor. You can just see the video. Recorded solutions, you can put up your videos of your some element of what you're trying to say, part of your assignments, which everybody will see. And then when we come into the classroom, it's more interaction, thing that we cannot do without speaking to each other. So those are the kinds of differences that I'm seeing, at least in the kind of courses that I'm teaching. And maybe Sumit has something to add to here.
Sure, yeah. So I just want to say that that we have been encouraged, and I'm encouraging my instructors to do a lot less of, put a lot less weight on big exams. There's going to be a lot more group work. There's going to be a lot more collaborative work, but not obviously people staying with each other, but just present a lot more presentations. In fact, like what you did, Abhirup, I think most of our professors will not have a big final exam. They will just have a lot of work through the semester. There'll be quizzes, which we'll call like just smaller exams through the semester if they want to do some exams. But a lot of it will be around presentations and written work, which we can assess separately.
And
But
Vasant,
Proctoru is something
yes.
we're using too. Sorry, just to add that,
Yeah, yeah.
like Ravi said, we're also using Proctoru. So that's, if someone wants to do a big exam, that will be done typically through Proctoru.
Thank you. Vasant.
Yeah, so I want to add to something I said earlier about the challenges of online, but also the advantages. So I do a project course where at the end of the semester, students submit a project. And throughout the semester, I encourage them to think about an interesting question to ask. Right? The project is question-based, so ask an interesting question, gather data, answer it, tell us what the results were. So what I found is I tried to use breakout groups that Zoom allows, right? And the first time I did it, it didn't work particularly well. And then the second time around, I realized I had to give people a lot more structure on like what I expected from the outcome of their breakout room. And I also told the students that I would take their outputs and synthesize them and post them on classes, which is the system that we use. So it was a lot more work for me, but the students really appreciated it. And they appreciated the fact that I was actually adding value. And the interesting thing is that the projects this semester were, an order of magnitude better than previous years. So I'm actually curious to hear from Mahira, because she alluded to the fact that she took project courses and they didn't quite work for her. So I'm actually curious because they worked exceptionally well for me at the end. Once I figured out how to use the breakout rooms and also add value myself. And I was teaching 6 to 9 at night. I would ask the students to submit everything. If they hadn't, I'd follow up with them the first thing in the morning. And then I'd spend the next 3 hours in the morning synthesizing and posting the results. And students love that, right? They love the fact that I was taking their outputs and asking further questions, trying to refine their questions, trying to sort of, broaden their inquiry. So that part of it actually worked well for me, and it's something I couldn't do quite as well in the physical setting. So, online exams is a different animal, and Ravi alluded to that. And there's many ways to do that to make sure people aren't cheating. But the project thing I thought actually worked quite well. So I'm curious, Mahira, to get some more color from you as to what didn't work so well for you.
Yeah. So one of my projects this past spring. I was in a robotics class, and you have to physically build a robot and code like path following code for the robot, and then at the end of the class, all the robots compete, and it's a big competition. It's a big production put up by MIT. So I was part of that, and then we got sent home, and all our design process, the physical build element was completely gone because the equipment, you can't take it home. That's just not something that's feasible. So, we used online design software to simulate what our robot would do online. But as a mechanical engineer, like that's not the fun part, right, of that project, of that class. So that element was gone, and like the competition element was gone. And so as our curriculum, a lot of our classes are like that, where you physically build something, because that's like part of the essence of mechanical engineering. So I guess that's where I was coming from when I said the projects didn't translate as well online, because you're going from something where it's exciting to be in the physical space to online, where it's not really meant to be, I would say.
So I actually have a question to ask, really on behalf, I think, of the audience as well, following up on something that Vasant mentioned, that the faculty, I think, have put in a lot of effort in transitioning to the online environment. And I've heard from my colleagues, I've done online teaching for a considerable number of years myself, but from colleagues who had to move to online teaching, that it's taken them sometimes 2 and 3 times the work that they would have put into in-person classes. But to the students, I want to ask you, and on behalf of students coming in particular, what did you think about the effort that you had to put in comparison to in-person classes? And what kind of effort was it to adjust to navigate in the online space? Yes, Zareen, please, and then Krishna. Yeah.
So most of my classes are with a smaller number of students, so 20 students or so. So it was interesting to adapt to online when there isn't that in-person connection. So at first it was just getting past the awkward stages of participating and having conversations. So for me, the transition, and for my peers also, wasn't as difficult. Classes and what we got to learn and maintaining the syllabus, it didn't change much. It was just that we weren't on campus anymore. So for my college, I think it's easier to adapt to in-person or remote learning. It's not that much of a difference. So we had an easier time, but there were issues with labs, since that was a whole new idea of how to make that remote. But professors are working towards making that as smooth of a transition as possible. So my experience was pretty fluid.
Thank you. Krishna, you had something to add to that.
Yeah, unfortunately, mine wasn't that fluid. In fact, it was a pretty roller coaster ride. I was like, I'm in my final year of university, so I do also have smaller classes. Like my classes had about 20 people, and unlike a lot of lectures, most of my classes we were actually facing each other. So we would sit in a conference table, and unlike a lecturer dictating us the instructions, we would look at each other, and we would engage in discourse, and we would talk, and that's how we would learn. And transitioning to that was, I wouldn't say the most easiest thing, because you can't just go off and around shooting each other points and talking about stuff. And I think the bigger issue with me was about my mental health, as opposed to just learning, just motivating myself to get out of the bed and just like move just from my bed to my study table, get on to work, go to the kitchen, get a food, go back to bed. So the limited movement, the minimal interaction with the outside world, and the anxiety that came with it was not the most productive environment to learn and actually get the full experience out of university. But I guess lucky thing about Canadians and our academic year is a bit different from the United States. So our online, we transitioned to online in March, and our final exams were in April. So we basically just had 3 weeks of online education per se to do. So it wasn't that big of a deal. But I feel like in next year, when it's going to be a more long-term thing where you'll be online for about 12 weeks and then again 12 weeks again, I think that's when you got to really ask yourself, is this what I want? Is this what I'm paying for? It is this going to be a suitable option for me? Yeah.
Would any of you, like to take that up a little bit further? Because I think Krishna has raised a very important point about how do you stay motivated, and this issue of mental health as well. Yeah, especially for people who are beginning, Javi, especially for people who are coming in their first year. They had been looking forward to what they've heard, especially international students, about this wonderful campus experience in Canada and the United States, and now suddenly the rug's been pulled out from under their feet. So what would your recommendations be to them, Javi?
Yes. In terms of the experience that a college, like your college experience, I'm sure that would be lacking if you do it online. When my last college turned online, I taken classes with some of my friends that I'd made the previous semester. So the thing was, we all went to different parts of the world, and when we came back, when spring break finished and we came back to online classes, we were all in different parts of the parts of the world, and like different time zones. So in terms of how the online classes adapted was, we worked with the professors in a sense, because I sent emails to my professors saying that I'm in a different part of the world. It'll be like I can't log in for classes at this time. So the lectures were mostly recorded, and the students could watch the lectures at their own leisure. and then the assignments were placed, and there was a certain due date. So we could watch it on our own time and then just do the assignment. So in terms of mental health, I would say that that eased a lot of stress, because normally when I had my classes, when it was not online in person, there was like a strict schedule, and then if it was due the next day, you would finish classes, go work all night or something, and then submit the assignments. So in online, I was watching the recordings and then doing, and if I ever got confused, I could just play it back over and over. Like there was not, it's no awkward situations of asking the professors again and again. But of course I did like email them and actively engage. But through like the semester, we worked through it, and all the professors, they constantly took our input on how we can better the semester. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very useful. I'm actually going to ask Simran to say a little bit, because she deals with teaching assistants across the board and any student complaints at the undergraduate level. And I'm wondering if any of that, and Ravi's smiling about that as well, being an administrator. And I'm wondering if there was a change in any of that, or an uptick, or what was the response when you all moved to the online situation?
So our students, because I get all the student evaluations for the Department of Economics, and we have about 1,000 majors, and we have about 2,000-3,000 other students there. So I get all of those and read them. For most people, it turned out fine, because even though we had 10 days to scramble in between spring break and the start of online classes, we did the best we could, and wanted to make sure everything was going fine. I was actually listening on to lectures which my teaching assistants or my professors were actually doing live at that point, because I was in all their classes and I was listening to what was going on. And if there was any problem, I would let them know within half an hour that this is what wasn't going on. Okay, this is fine. Can you just change this? Can you change this? So we were doing it at that time live. But the student evaluations which came at the end, so at least for me, I presented the class exactly as I did in the classroom, except I wasn't physically there. So, calling on people, and, you have the names, you can see the pictures, you try and do the same. So my students actually had a very good time. And even the Chinese students said, okay, we don't mind getting up at 2 o'clock at night. We'll attend your lecture, because my classes were like at 12 in the afternoon. But there were some evaluations, I have to be truthful about some people, maybe 3 or 4 in the department, which really did not, which showed that that person was not taking enough interest in teaching. And that at the end were, pulled up, and they were sent to all kinds of training. And right now also I'm monitoring their training. And actually I have changed them. So those 3 or 4 will not be teaching anymore. Sorry. They will be doing recitations or discussion sections or something, because I don't want to put them in the classroom again. So those, they've been reassigned. But we do take this very seriously. And so when faculty are emailing me now, there's one person, he really doesn't know how much to do. So he's been told to go there, and there. And then I will assign someone to help him along with his teaching, so that everything goes as smoothly as possible. So the administrators at the back, we are not sitting back and enjoying summer. We are actually working very hard to make sure that everything goes just fine. We do not want to present our courses as as really bad ones. We want to present them as better than what they were in person. I mean, you have to maintain the standard and the standing of the university. So we are all actually totally involved in that. Yep.
Yes, Ravi, you wanted to follow up on that.
Yeah, so I just want to follow up on that. I think for us, the online, there are 2 things here. One is the experience in the class, and the second is campus experience. As far the experience in the class is concerned, our feedback shows that our students are actually very pleased with the online classes. They can do it on their time. And the generation is very tech friendly, and so that makes a difference. Our enrollments have actually gone up, and I think partly the reason is that if a class is fully online, somebody can be taking it without coming to campus, and they save on the campus residence and other costs. So it kind of works out cheaper overall. The second thing is the campus life. And yes, campus life has been restricted. I expect it to be restricted over this coming year itself. So for an incoming freshman, it depends on the choices and personal preferences. If you're looking for campus life, I would say if you have the option, defer it. If you want to take a break, if you want to do some kind of a volunteer work, I think that's a great thing to do during this year. If you don't have that option, you can take the classes. And interestingly, I've seen many universities have actually are more open to taking students than they were earlier. The admission standards have changed a little bit. So if you want to get a start, take the classes, take them online, and then transition into the full classes in your second year and third year. So it's really a matter of personal preference and the options that are available.
Thank you. Yes, Krishna.
Sweet. Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to add to that now that we are talking about campus experience and education. So we're really in this conundrum where we have to think about whether we want, what do we have to prioritize, whether we have to prioritize education or the campus experience. And for me, we're talking about, right now we're talking about Sonarians, you know, a very specific subset of this population who went to a boarding school that was isolated on top of a mountain, who had minimal access to the internet and the outside world. And the whole point of coming to a whole university in North America is to experience, is the experience. I feel like you learn tremendously more than class by just the experience, the decisions you make every day. In Sonar, we had a very structured lifestyle. We woke up at a specific time. We got to school on February 20th, and I knew on April 20th what I'm going to do. I knew on June 20th what we're going to do. I knew in August what we're going to do. I even knew what I was going to eat. And that's not what life is, right? That, I mean, we're going to have a different schedule. We know Monday night kebabs was going to be there. We know April 15th, Hudson's Runs was going to be there. We know August, we had to start working on NCC. And then we had all these things. We already knew about this thing. And right now we're in a situation where we don't even know what we're going to have for lunch. So these are important decisions that we have to make. And we only realize this when we come here. And so for me, I think I'm prioritizing my campus experience more. And talking about enrollments, one of the biggest reasons people, I mean, universities, of course, are going to open up enrollments because A, they need the funds, and B, I've heard, I think in the latest statistic, it was like 1 out of every 4 people are considering taking a gap year. And I think taking a gap year is like the perfect thing to do right now. Because if you want to, if you're just in for the education, then well, just pick up a book. You know, you can learn so much from the book, and you can even ask for your professors for the syllabus, and you can go through the syllabus where they assign readings, or if they are nice to you, you might just sit there and audit the class and not have to actually do the assessments per se. But I mean, coming to North America, the whole point is to enjoy the campus experience, get involved, push yourself out of the comfort zone, learn new things. You know, in Sonar, we weren't taught topics like sociology or philosophy, or you know, we weren't talking about sexuality or feminism or anything or any other topic. So you can explore all these topics while sitting in your room by picking up a book and reading about these things. And so yeah, campus experience is like the most important thing for me when you come to the United States. And you're paying 50 grand. I mean, if you're really looking for the education, you can get that for like a $5 library fee or something. So you should really have to keep that in mind. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Thank you. Yes, Mahira, please.
Yeah, to add on to that, also a big part of American University is extracurriculars. So I'm on the rowing team at MIT, and I found a great sense of community with that, and in other clubs that I'm in. And like this fall, MIT isn't really having sports or clubs, and I think that's like a big part of the college experience, that if you're coming all the way to the US, like you must experience that. That's like, there's only 4 years of undergrad, and I think, you know, for me personally, I don't want to have to, I'm stubborn. I don't want to have to sacrifice like 4 amazing years of my life because of the pandemic. So yeah, I think if experience and like college life is really important to you, I agree with Krishna. Like it's a good time to explore something and maybe educate yourself on your own for a year, a semester, and then come back when you can really get the most out of this.
I hear you too. I mean, this is decades ago, but most of us didn't do our undergrad in America or Canada. And I always tell my students that this is just such a wondrous time, these 4 years. You know, to international students or parents, sometimes they wonder if you're going to go on and become a doctor, why do you need this 4-year education, you know? And I say, don't take this magical time away from your kids. Give it to them. We didn't have it. I wish I could be your generation. So I do feel for the generation that are now enrolled and are wondering what's going to happen with, you know, the actual campus experience as well. And that's so, so very important. And to Krishna's point too, that you end up taking such an array of courses in those general ed requirements. Oh, why do I need to study sociology when I'm going to be an engineer? You know, those kinds of questions. And I think it's really what makes the American and Canadian higher education absolutely brilliant and untouchable, if I may say so, as well. Krishna, you had something, and then we have some questions from the floor that are very specific, but I'll let you say what you wanted to.
Yeah, just to add on to that, you know, I mean, like you said, you take up sociology and all these different courses. So just like personal example, I came to Canada in 2017, and I thought I was enrolled in economics and a lot of statistics courses, and then I was also involved in a lot of art courses. And then what happened eventually that I ended up getting out of the statistics zone, and I'm majoring in film studies and art history and minoring in statistics. So there's a whole different transition that happens. And I mean, talking again about the whole campus experience thing, because I'm like really huge about that. I'm like, I think that's paramount to education, you know. I mean, when was the last time you guys sat down with your OS friends and we were like, hey, remember the last time I got a 10 on 10 in the geography test? No, you don't remember those moments, do you? You were like, hey, when was the last time I went down to the cut and got that ball or something? I don't know. Or just, you know, so it's really important to think about that. I mean, there's more to just the in-class education, and there's no taking away from it. And if you want to do in-class education, I mean, MIT has adopted an online education model for years. You have edX, where MIT has partnered with Google, and they do provide online education, and you can actually get a degree through that online learning platform. So if you want to do that, then that option is always available. You know, it's here today, it's here tomorrow, it will be here forever. But maybe taking that 1 year off and maybe exploring more about yourself and the world would be a much better option. But yeah.
So I have a quick question here for all the panelists, and really in a sense for the audience. We need to take a break for the school song at an appropriate point, but then we need to continue this conversation. I think, Professor Gulati, did you say that you have to leave in a little bit?
I have to leave in about 10 minutes. Yes, sorry.
Okay, then we do have some specific questions that are directed particularly to the Canadian faculty here.
Okay.
This is a question from Kiran Bhatia. She is Sanar 91 and residing in the UAE and paying international fees for both children studying in Canada. She writes, my son has been accepted in April for the first year at the University of Waterloo in Canada for a co-op program in a BSc Honors Computer Science. And the fall term has been declared online. What do you know is anticipated for the winter term? Is it best to defer for the term or for the year? So that's with regards to her son. And then the daughter is studying in her third year a BSc Cell Biology and Anatomy at McGill. She's going to do her fall term online. And what does she need to do to get back to Canada if there is a lab work that is required that cannot be done online? And finally, a more general question, I think that applies to everyone. Are there any fee rebates for international students expected due to the online option or requirement now?
Okay, so 3 things there. The first, let me start with the fee rebates. So UBC is not processing any fee rebates for international students in the coming year. So, and it feels sort of unfair, but that's how it is. It's just no fee rebates. Going back to first and third years, I don't know what the situation is at Waterloo. At UBC, first-year students are not coming back to residences. It's just the first-year residences are not opening because supposedly the official line is that that first-year residences were designed for more communal living, and communal living is just not going to be considered safe at this point, right? So those first-year residences will not open. Third-year residences, if you are already in a residence, you are supposedly allowed to come back. And again, the cell biology question is probably program specific. If you're abroad, like I said, your ability to come back to Canada depends on your program declaring your return to be essential, that you cannot somehow meet your learning outcomes while you're abroad. If your program is issuing you that, then the government of Canada may let you back in. Otherwise, if it's not essential, even if you have a visa, your return is not guaranteed.
Thank you. Anything that you could add to that, Abhirup, from the Canadian perspective?
Right. I'm mostly reflecting what Sumit said. But I think there's also this thing about, like, if you got your visa before March 18th, that's when you're getting the letters, I think. In case you haven't got the letter, but you have the date, then you would at least know. Is that correct, Sumit?
So yeah, if you got a letter before March 18th, that's for first year admittance that you can apply for a visa. But again, you have to prove it's essential for you to return.
Oh.
If you have a visa already, because the third year student probably already has a visa already, a student visa, even her needs, if she has to return, it's only if the program deems her return to be essential.
Right. Yeah.
And all students will probably have this. So the university would be communicating in a very clear, hopefully in a detailed manner, with the student itself, telling you whether you can actually or not return. But this is what I understood of all the discussions that have been happening at UPC.
Totally. That's what I wanted to add. I mean, we're reaching out to students on a very specific basis. Like, program administrators will very specifically tell you whether what's happening and what your role will be and what the options are. And to sort of relate to that, and I suppose so that's one part of, like, what is it that we can do in the sense of what choices do we have? That's the limitation. And then if you actually have choices, if they tell you that when you can do this, so if you have, suppose you have the visa and you got it on the letter on time, and they tell you that you can come, and then you have to decide whether we want to go or we want to defer. I think that's where it gets more complex, I suppose, when you start thinking about everything about what's been said, like Krishna and others were speaking about the experience on campus and everything. So it's a very individual decision. I think that will probably require a little more reflective and maybe I suppose something that's more of a case-by-case rather than I don't have a very general statement that I can make in answer to these questions beyond what Sumit said.
Okay. My apologies to Kiran Bhatia. I should have said he, but I do love these gender-neutral names. So my mistake there for feminizing Kiran. Vasant, you had something to add to that question.
Yeah, just real quickly, I think Krishna put it really well. You know, the university education really is a luxury good, right? It's an experience good, and you know, doing it online just isn't the same thing. It doesn't even, you know, just doesn't compare. And NYU is not giving any rebates either, but I suspect in the longer run, things will bifurcate. I think that you'll have tiered fee structures for purely online versus face-to-face. But universities just aren't ready for that yet. They haven't had enough time to think about it. They haven't had enough time to plan. But I predict come next fall, you know, you're going to have sort of probably a tiered pricing structure, you know, where you've got sort of the high-touch experience good, you know, assuming that there's a vaccine and that things are sort of sufficiently under control by then, which is again a sort of an unknown. But if that's the case, then you're probably going to gravitate towards a tiered kind of fee structure. That's what I would predict, because the two, you know, just don't compare. I don't think you can justify charging people 50, 60 grand a year for, you know, online courses just for the certification aspect of it, right? That just seems excessive. So I don't think that's a sustainable business model longer term for universities. A colleague of mine has also just recently published a study, you know, sort of categorizing universities and sort of placing them into 4 buckets, you know, those that will thrive, those that will disappear, and those that will survive, and those that will I guess, struggle. And this is based on sort of the value proposition, where they're located and things like that. So, it's a time of transition, and I think many universities are at considerable risk at the moment, because they've just gotten themselves into a position where they've just kept raising fees, ad nauseum, without regard to sort of how much burden they're imposing on students. And that is, coming home to roost now with this massive discontinuity.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective, and of course, much being talked about as well. So we're going to take a break here for the, I'm sorry, Sumit, you have something to say, and directly after that, we'll take a break for the school song, and then we can all congregate back together here. So to Sumit, and then on to the school song. Yes.
I do want to say I have to go, and I'm sorry about that. But I am really happy to answer any questions if you want to email me. I know that my email will be posted once the program is done, but I think it's already posted on the. Is it already posted on the announcement? If not, I'm happy to.
Not yet.
Yeah,
but okay.
Yeah, but
thanks
yes, please email me if I can help out. I'll be quite happy to. Thank you, and thanks for inviting me, everyone.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for all your sharing your information, expertise. Thanks so much. Take care. Karan, could I pass this on to you for the school song, please? And then we'll all come back. Okay, that still gives me goosebumps. And somebody said it's much prettier when it's sung only by the girls and not having the boys mess things up. And to which I said, well, boys are a necessary evil. When they grow up, you need them to carry heavy loads and to pull down things off tall shelves. So we are going to continue with Q&A. And I will share some other questions here from the audience. I'm sorry, this was from Divya Tahira, and Professor Gulati has left, but Abhirup, this will be then directed to you. Divya writes that she wants to pursue her PhD in 2021, and what is the probability of faculty taking on new researchers? And will the current scenario affect the admission of PhD students? And actually, I think that this also applies clearly to American universities as well. But we'll start first with Abhirup and then pass it on to others of you who are involved in the PhD program. What do you hear about, again, admissions for PhD students and the likelihood of research assistantships and so on?
Thank you, Professor Mann. It's a good question. And I think it depends on where you want to apply for which program you're applying to. I think some of the programs where you need to get access to laboratories, I think there might be some restrictions in terms of what they can do. But in terms of funding, I can speak from the Canadian university side. So I've got federal funding. And they're very helpful in extending these grants, and they're providing something I just read yesterday. I haven't gone through it yet, but they're providing ways in which researchers don't have their research programs disrupted because of not being able to take on PhD students. And so this year I haven't seen any kind of restraint at all in hiring. I hired 3 research students this year. And I think I will hire in the next year as well. And I think that's pretty general across the school. I'm with the School of Business. I suspect that's the same with the arts and humanities, but we can hear from others as well. So in terms of funding, the funds are getting, so this is the professor grant funding from external sources. I can speak to that at least. The funds are getting extended. So you're allowed to extend your fund by more than a year or more than that. And you're getting some leeway in terms of taking care of research students who might be affected in different ways. So I wouldn't restrain myself in the application. I would work very hard on the application because I think it's going to be a competitive market too. So you would, ideally you would speak to professors depending on which area you want to apply to and discuss, the application format and what should go in there.
Thank you for that. If Ravi and Vasant and Simran could chime in as well. Ravi, to you first, please.
Yeah, so I'm also in the College of Business in the Department of Marketing. So our funding model is a little different from, let's say, the engineering school. For us, the funding hasn't changed. I mean, our problem has been trying to get the students in. So we admitted 2 students from India this year, and I'm in touch with them every week to see are they able to get the visa or not. And so we have to try and make sure that we can actually get there in time. I think the bigger issue is it's more about the job market for PhDs going forward. That has changed over the last couple of years. It will change even more, partly because of many of the jobs that were research jobs being transitioned into teaching faculties. So my advice would be go for a PhD, but go to a good university and work with somebody. I think the bigger thing is who you work with. That makes a big difference. Work with somebody who's well known, because that's what's going to eventually impact your placement.
Okay, thank you. Simran, could you go next, please?
The same thing. So even our students, we get obviously we get a lot of foreign graduate students. And there are some who are not going to be able to reach here. And we have some of them in Europe, including our 2nd years and 3rd years, who have gone home. And they are not going to be able to come back because of the visa situation. So the graduate courses are being offered as a hybrid model. They are having them in person because there's a smaller number of students, but they are also going to be recording them so those students can also have access to it. And on top of it, Minnesota is ranked in economics pretty highly. And so we have to make sure that the ranking stays. So our students do get hired very quickly. So, we had, I don't know, like some 27 students on the market this time, and they all obviously have gotten hired and they all have jobs. So, but, we have to obviously keep on making sure and that they also get time to have a research assistantship with the professors and so on. And the professors are very cognizant of this. They are all working together to make sure that this thing goes off very successfully, but they have to learn to do stuff online because there are students who are not going to get here. I mean, we have admitted however many, 25 students, I think, in the graduate program. But we are just expecting that no one is going to reach here for fall, and we're expecting that for spring, they'll be able to get visas and be able to get here.
Okay. Yep, thank you. Anything to add to that, Vasant, from NYU's perspective?
Not a lot. I mean, I run the PhD program at the Center for Data Science. And I mean, data science is, a red hot field these days. So extremely competitive, difficult to get in. But once you do get in, you're pretty much set. I don't, by 21, things should be fine. We just admitted on fall 20 cohort, and some of the requests we're getting are for deferral. Or we were when New York was sort of a hotspot, a COVID hotspot. Now that it's cooled down, I think those fears have subsided a little bit. So things are sort of changing by the week, literally. But I'd say that by next fall, I would expect that things would be a lot more certain. And like I think as Ravi said, the key thing is to apply to the right place and make sure you are working with the right people. And there are two different models of that, right? In the business school, you follow sort of a social science model. PhD students are typically funded by the school. You sort of, at least at NYU, at Stern, the PhD students, I ran the PhD program about 20 years ago. And, in the social science model, you sort of come in, you explore, and you say, oh, I want to work with person X. Data science follows an engineering model where you actually, which I sort of affectionately refer to as the slave model, where you essentially are assigned to an individual right from the get-go. So you'd better be sure as to who you want to work with, because you're stuck with them for the next 4 or 5 years of your life. And sometimes it doesn't work out, right? So there's a bit of a risk there. But those are the two basic models out there in the PhD space. But my summary sort of thinking is that by next fall, things should have settled down. And I don't think PhD programs are going to be affected. What is affected is people from China, right? Considering the sort of political escalation of tensions between the US and China, I actually got a list of universities from China which are associated with the People's Liberation Party. And those students are, even existing students might have a hard time getting a visa to come back, right? So it's the Chinese students are at considerable risk, but I don't think the same will apply to Indian students.
Thank you. And we have one additional question here from the floor, again, back to undergraduate admissions. And this one asks that I think the main dilemma students who have been admitted, freshmen, are facing is whether they should opt for the online option for the fall, or should they defer for a semester. And I've heard that in person from a number of people as well. Again, the idea of is, the value for the money as well. So one is the college and campus experience, but even otherwise sort of weighing the caliber of online courses. So should they take the online option for fall with the presumption that in spring they could be on campus in North America? And I know there's a difference between Canada and the United States, unfortunately, for us, south of the border. So one is that question, and then I had another one to pose on my own, but I'll let you answer that first, please.
Who's that?
One of the students take that up. Should they defer and only start their study in spring, or should they take the online option for the fall? So start a semester later or take the online option in fall. Ravi, to you first, and then to Krishna.
So I think I kind of talked a little bit about that. It also depends on the options. If you have options to do something in fall, like volunteering, do it. Because campus experience is very important. But I also want to say that deferring to spring, keep in mind, you're arriving in the middle of winter. And in most universities, that's not the most pleasant experience. So if you want to defer it for a year. If you want to defer it to spring, I would say, just make your choices and think about it very carefully.
That's yeah, very good. Yeah. Krishna, you were going to say something to that?
Yeah, I mean, I went on a whole rant about that, so I guess there's nothing much to add on to it. But yeah, I second what Dr. Ravi just said. If you're thinking of deferring it, might as well just take an entire year off. And, I mean, the whole, I think there's a very negative connotation that comes when you say, I'm taking a year off. You're not taking a year off. You're working on yourself. You're reading stuff. You're not spending your time at home eating mommy daddy's food and just chilling and doing whatever nonsense you are. No, that's not what's going to happen. You're going to stay at home. You're going to pick up some books. You're going to read. You're going to look up what you truly enjoy that you have not been able to explore in your past years. And that's how you're not going to take a year off. You're just going to see your options and see where you are in life. And I think it's a fantastic decision. I mean, had it not been a year, had online education and this pandemic not happened, I would have still recommended it, if I'm being completely honest. I mean, just take a year off, especially because you've come from Sinar, I mean, Sinar is not even a part of India, if you think about it. I mean, it is a part of India as in the geographical space, but then you don't even have a phone. Then you have to deal with social media. I mean, when I came here, before in Sonar, we never had social media. And then when I came here, I was exposed to this whole world of social media, and I was constantly on it. So like managing my time management, such an important thing. Making your own food. I mean, great job. You know how to make your bed, but then there's things to do after you know how to make your bed. So there's a lot of things you have to consider. So yeah, take that year off. Don't take that year off. Work on yourself. Stay at home. Learn YouTube videos. Watch movies. There's so much to learn in this world, and volunteering is such a fantastic job. There's such a bad work culture in India. Okay, I'm gonna just put it out there. We don't work until we have graduated. Whereas if you come to the United States and Canada, there are kids who have started working since they were 14 years old, 16 years old. You know, I got a job when I came here, which I wouldn't have done had I been in India. You know, so get a job, just any random job, and then you can learn so much financial responsibility, how to manage money. You know, so yeah, get a job if you can, and just work on yourself. Don't take a year off. Just work on yourself at home.
I love that. Actually, Mahira's aunt, who's also a professor, Avantika, she sent me a note saying, quite a lot of what you've just said, that the notion or the idea of a gap year, and not a year off, but a gap year is quite missing in India. And that if this is an opportunity that has been thrown your way because of this pandemic, that would be really useful for people and worthwhile in a lot of ways, because that opportunity is never going to come around again. You know, the ability to take a gap year is only now. And then it's retirement. Then it's, at the other end of it. So I think those are about the specific questions we have. I have just one sort of a very nuts and bolts kind of question, again, on behalf of what I've been hearing, that if some students do, or most of them do take the option of taking online courses, and if they are in an engineering program or one of those hands-on lab kinds of courses, would you recommend that they take their core classes, their humanities core, in that first semester? And if you really loaded that on, you take your writing classes, you take your literature required class, your history class, whatever it might be, a sociology class. Is that something that's doable from your point of view? Those of you who especially are not in the humanities or social sciences. Yes, Mahira.
So I think it's definitely doable. I would say I second what Krishna said about the gap year, and I feel strongly about it. So if you really must graduate on time, and this is something you need to start school for some reason, then I think that is a good move, because you want to get the most out of your core curriculum for your major. So humanities, I took a music class, an electronic music class, this past semester. So it was actually a lot of software, like music programming. So not as much humanities, but I mean, that translated online pretty easily. And I'm sure like other humanities classes, like philosophy classes, other things like that could also translate online, especially like a lot of reading based classes. So I think it's definitely doable. And if you must start school like that, that's actually a smart route to go. But I also think taking humanities classes alongside my engineering classes has been really nice, because you're thinking in two frames at a time, right? You're not like overloaded with all of this STEM, all of this math-based, engineering-based classes. Your humanities is kind of an escape when you're so focused on that area. So that's another thing to think about, is that dichotomy of thinking at one time is like, it's actually like really nice. So it depends, like if you really need to start school, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks very much. I'm just checking in the chat column here if there is anything I've missed in terms of the questions, and I think not. Karan, if there are any questions that I've missed, could you come on and please share those with the panelists? Oh, here they are. Here's the Q&A. Okay, sorry. Here we are. From Renalini Watson, who notes that she's doing a class through University of Wisconsin-Madison, your old haunts, right, Ravi? And she says, from her perspective, breakout rooms are a great development in online language learning. It gives us a lot more chance to practice the language as opposed to in-person classes. And the challenge for our class seems to be connectivity issues and the limited number of people who can be seen on the screen. They are using Blackboard, which makes us feel disconnected from each other. The connectivity challenges also impact how much of the course content is being conveyed. So if any of you can speak to that issue of, again, especially the internet seems to be so overloaded now with everyone on the net all the time. Has that been an issue for you in terms of the classes? And how would you know, what do you see in the near future? Or are there any ways to negotiate around that? Yes, Abhirup, could you take that up, please?
Right, and I think this question also generally points to the constraints topic that I raised right in my introduction, that there are certain constraints of it's not just going online and doing the courses, but from the student's point of view, and the connection is one of them. And it's not just if you're in another country, even locally, we've had connection problems. I think so. Generally speaking, I think it's a great idea to connect with if you have to do the online courses and an online course. Connect with the professor, speak to them about all the kind of problems you have, whether it's your connection and whether it's unstable, but also things that we've seen some discussion on in terms of pressures that you have. Do you have a quiet place? Do you have flexible timings so that you can just jump in and attend the course? We've had these kind of questions, and the sense I get is you'd be surprised how much people will try to help you as a student trying to attend a course with these constraints. And so there are some people who actually connect with students before courses start, but don't hesitate to ask questions. Put all the questions out there. In the middle, like suppose 1 week into the course, you find there's certain things that are important for you. You should raise it. It's completely pointless to stay quiet about it and then suffer through it. You know, it's a learning outcomes. Are you getting to your learning outcomes? You know, do you know what the learning outcomes are and how they've translated into the online model? And are you learning? And so if any of these come up, you should connect. And also, if you have suggestions, like don't do the class like this, do something different. This is something that can help what you're trying to do. Many professors are very open to these kind of feedback in the middle of the course too. And this is what we've talked about as well, that it's a learning process on all sides. So my suggestion would be to, yes, the connection problem is one of those fixed variables. It's not you either have a problem or you don't have a problem. And this is something that you would express, and very likely you'll find a way through it. Not something that's going to be a deal breaker necessarily.
Yeah. Couple more questions here, and actually here's a bit of advice from again Mahira's aunt Avantika Bawa. She notes that for those of you who are, you know, and these are expensive universities that we've been talking about here, but she's also suggested that especially for students who are already in Canada or the United States, that one could take a semester worth or 2 semesters worth of classes at the community colleges, and that those are transferable credits. You can learn a lot there, a lot of grounding. And in fact, we have some of our students who take the first year or first couple of years of classes at community college and then transfer to the 4-year university. And that they will graduate from that university. And so that I think is a very valuable suggestion as well, that do consider community colleges. You can save money and again, transfer the credits from there. And here I think is an important question. And maybe that is one that we can wrap up with. And it's a two-pronged question. One is to the suggestion that we had for taking a gap year. And one of our OS, Abhijit Datta, points out that a gap year is a luxury, especially for students from India, but as we know here as well. When we say, okay, study abroad for students, that is a luxury. Not everybody has the means to study abroad. And so the question is again about this idea that, one is putting together loans and so on to make it through the 4 years in North America. And if we add a gap year onto that, so some of what we say is, Indians are on sort of a treadmill to get to that job. That some of it is, again, financial contingency, and that they cannot really afford to take that gap year. And I think tacked on to that is the question of, by Abha Shroff, and actually an observation that students from India feel they do not have the skills to be able to go out and get a job or internship, as most of them have just passed grade 12, and really what they've done up to that point is study. And if you have any suggestions about what they might be, or what if we have any suggestions here about how does one go about acquiring that something to do in that year as well. Yes, Ravi.
So I can just start. Well, firstly, I think from a financial point, I see Abhijit's comment here. I think students in India are better off than many students here, because students out here actually have to work and put themselves through college. But having said that, I think my suggestion of the gap year is go and do volunteer work. Right now, there's so many opportunities to do volunteer work. It doesn't have to be an internship, it doesn't have to be a paid job. You're putting that volunteer experience, which goes a long way even later once you're done with the college. Coming back to the earlier point about taking community college classes, I think that's great if you can do that. Even in high school, the AP classes, my daughter now, she's graduate for several years. She took a year's worth of college classes in high school, and that way she was able to use 4 years to actually pick up 2 degrees in 4 years, So it's just a way on how you want to manage those classes. But I would recommend coming back, that do volunteer work, and there are plenty of opportunities now in India to do that.
That's right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Mahira, yes.
Yeah. So one thing that I wasn't very good at before, and I think I'm getting better at, is networking. So I think using your resources, using the people your parents, your teachers, and showing them that you have an interest. Oh, it would be really cool to do this kind of work this summer, or this semester, this year. I'm taking a gap year. I want to do, I'm interested in learning and working. I think if you show that interest to people in your circle, you can network that way, and you can actually get your foot in the door for a lot of opportunities. So I think, yeah, just talking to people and putting yourself out there, sending your resume to online applications. It's actually it's worked for me in the past when I've had not that much experience. So just putting yourself out there more, I think, is the way to go if you're really looking for an opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Krishna.
So yeah, I don't know if I'm dumb or not, but I just don't see, I don't get the whole concept of taking a gap year being a luxury and a more expensive concept, since you are basically just saving that 50 grand that you would have otherwise spent. So I don't know if I'm doing the math correctly anyway. So, but I don't think it's a luxury per se. I'm just very confused by that point that Abhijit made, that it is an expensive concept, since, well, you'll be saving money and you'll be staying at home and you'll be learning, and you have to think about not the money spent, but what you're getting out of it. So when you're putting in that 50 grand, let's say you're not taking a gap, you put that 50 grand in and you're staying at home and you work and you're studying and you're learning, are you actually getting that 50 grand worth of education and experience and learning that you would have otherwise received? So I don't know what's more expensive, whether you would rather just put that 50 grand there and get whatever bare minimum you want, or you can just wait for another year, of the 50 grand that you were otherwise going to spend anyway, and get the full experience out of it. And talking about just jobs, unfortunately I left Sonar and I came back here, so I don't know how the job market works in India, but I think getting a job is more important than just get a job. It doesn't have to be whatever. You definitely you're not gonna you can't just pick whatever you want, right? That's not how life works. That okay, I don't want to do this, but just get a job, and there's so much to learn from any job, whatever. Like my first job, I worked as a server in a restaurant. All right, and I learned so much from there. I learned about customer service. I learned about how to have interpersonal skills, how to maintain a professional relationship with your superior and your colleagues, and there's so much to learn from that. So maybe get that job. And there's so many like telecommunications jobs online available that you need minimal, like a high school degree is enough to get that job. So getting a job is more important than finding whatever idea or dream job that you're looking for at this moment. Because yeah, everybody is, I mean, unemployment's all-time high, recession's coming in, and everything's all berserk and crazy. So getting a job is a big deal, and you will be making money. So I don't think, I mean, you will be making money, so how's that expensive? But yeah, sorry, I don't know if Abhijit can join in and explain, can join the.
I think sometimes we also forget that students here are not, most of them are not well heeled at all. Some of them are working full time and taking a full load of classes as well. So I think, you know, that has to be balanced and factored into this too. I'll put myself out there and say that students coming from Sanar, I think, are pretty well connected. Their parents are pretty well connected. So to Mahira's point, you know, just get around and tell your parents' friends that you are looking for something substantial, something valuable to do in the summer. And I think on average, I'll say that at least for my university, that they are people of means. If they manage to send their kids to Sanar, they are people of means. So I will also, you know, I agree with you, Krishna, to a great extent there. And Abhirup has something to add, and then Krishna, and then we'll think about wrapping up unless we have something more to say. And I think Jaivir had his hand up too. So to Abhirup and to Krishna and Jaivir.
Yeah, I'm just going to very quickly add, I think there are two discussions going on. It's whether one has the choice and whether one has the opportunities to make such a decision. It's expensive, almost, you know, very expensive to push back a year for many students. So it's best not to stereotype, as this is a good thing to do. I think it's a good thing to do for some of us. It's not a good thing to do for some of us. And so just to reach out to people who are listening in on this, is that not to feel stressed about, hey, others are taking a year off. I'm not taking a year off. So I'm not getting that $5 a year for free education. So it's just more of something that you would connect to your the opportunity that you have access to. And I say this because I think it's a lot of stress when we start getting into these, you know, very stereotype advice about this is what should be done. And I worry about that a little bit. I just wanted to push that in there. It's a very, very heterogeneous group that we are speaking to. And some will have these opportunities, others won't, even if they try, or even if they want to. But it doesn't mean that that group is necessarily disadvantaged. You can use this the opportunity even by studying online or whatever opportunities you have access to, reach out and find out how you can make the best of your time. That's what I wanted to put in very quickly.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's very important to point out that it's not a single solution for everybody. And it will be highly individualized given the student's own needs, desires, and the parent's situation as well. I think that that's very important too. Jaivir, you had something to add to that.
Based on the conversation earlier, I just thought that if you look at a gap year, you should, like, in terms of volunteering and working, I would say that use that. If I had the opportunity to take a gap year, and if one has the luxury, they should try and explore their interests and like make up their mind on as to what they want to do when they do come to the university and what they want to pursue. Because like I went undecided, and it's only like after my first year that I knew, like, I get it, your first year you explore yourself, but like if you get a head start on that, it wouldn't hurt. And like exploring different fields, just putting yourself out there, again, volunteering, I think it would really benefit you when you actually do go to college. So this is kind of like an opportunities presented itself. So again, if you can look at it as a luxury, but like I would think that like it's an opportunity where you can further your understanding on what you want to do. Because like many people that I know have changed their majors, and like they're struggling, then they have to like meet certain major requirements that they haven't come to at all. So then that really like puts a burden on them.
That's true. You point out actually an important fact that 4-year graduation rates in the US, and maybe Ravi and Vasant can speak to that, and probably also in Canada, not everybody by any chance graduates in 4 years. And some of it is because they don't know what they want to be doing, or, you know, let's face it, Indian parents have steered them in one direction, and they get to North American colleges and they say, no, this is not for me, and I'm not going to do it, you know. And so it takes them a while to steer out of that and have to take that whole set of courses. And so 4-year graduation rates are not the norm. So that 5th year could be regarded as a year of really an added year of education as well. So again, it varies, but I think you're right in pointing that out as well. I think we are again finished with the Q&A, and I can't thank the panelists enough for all of your contributions here, and for, I think, putting at ease the minds of both parents and students who've tuned into the webinar. And I hope we all can meet in person sometime soon. So thank you all very much. Thanks to the OSS exec for having led this webinar, and to all of you for your time. And good luck to you all. Godspeed. Take care. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anveen, and thank you to all the panelists.
Thank you.
It was a great webinar. The recording is available for all to see on the Olsenarian website. Thank you very much. Good morning, good night.
Thanks, guys.